Welcome back to another episode of our Drift Car Build-Off presented by Coil Rod and Spec Clutch.
What are we doing today, Pete? I can't remember. Is it aerodynamics?
I don't know, DP, but I think it's going to be a very cool day.
Maybe engine building? I don't know what we're doing. Clearly, it's a cooler kind of day around here in the hopes of getting the front end back on the car by the end of today's episode. So should be looking like a whole car again, at least for a minute before we tear the back end off. As far as the radiators go, this is obviously the original factory unit, and it has seen better days. This is what 300,000 kilometers does to a radiator. It is absolutely filthy. There's some remains of a dead bird here that I will not taste test. And as is typical with OE radiators, it's got these plastic end caps, which are prone to cracking, especially with age. And this is a pretty old heat cycled out unit. So getting rid of that, don't want it to go boom at the racetrack. And of course, we have upgraded to this Koyorad 48mm HH-Series core. It is a 2-row, and it's designed to be a direct replacement for the factory unit. So it just drops into the factory position. Everything lines up. It's got bracketry on the sides for the stuff that bolts to the sides of the factory unit. And this HH series core is a high efficiency core thanks to a higher density of fins and tubes. And it's also 7% thicker than the factory core. So it's not a big change in thickness, but because of the efficiency of this HH series core, it will give us a real bump in cooling efficiency. It's obviously got these beautifully hand-welded aluminum vent tanks, so no worries about those cracking. And it's even triple pressure tested, PT. They don't pressure test it once. They don't pressure test it twice. No, they pressure test it 3 times to make sure this puppy will not leak when you fire your car up for the first time. So that is a quick summary of the radiator that we've gone with. Now it's time, I think, to bolt on the front rad support area and start fitting this up.
As you can see, I fitted all of the plastics onto our radiator, and I have to commend Koyo for making such a great fitting radiator. All the time, every time we've used them, they fit spot on. Like with the BMW, there's all these plastic pieces that need to bolt on, and everything lines up exceptionally well, which is not the case with all aftermarket radiators, so kudos to them on that. Next thing that I have to do before I put this whole assembly in is put our clutch fan in place here, because that's the only way you're going to bolt this whole assembly in. And I've got a question for all you BMW experts out there. Is replacing the actual plastic fan worthwhile? Moose told me that the OEM ones, and this looks like it is the original one, this probably has almost 300,000 kilometers on it, tend to break and explode in a fashion that takes everything out. So is this something that's worthwhile, or did I just spend, I think, $20 or $30 just for the fun of it? So please do let me know in the comments. And with this, I should now be able to drop this in here and line it up and slowly get it into place. Like, there's still a little bit of fiddling to do here because the tabs for the oil cooler are underneath, but there you go. So we've got that in place. Check out our AC condenser. This thing has also seen better days, but we're not going to change it out.
It's time to install some rad hoses, and rather than putting in these crusty old 300,000 kilometer OE hoses, which have gotten pretty stiff, and they could certainly split and fail on us, we've decided to upgrade to these Samko sport hoses, which are built to be exact replica of the OE hoses. So you can see this one, for example, is routed exactly like the factory hose. The benefit, though, is that they are made of silicone, and so they're very durable. In fact, they're so durable that Samko offers a lifetime warranty on them. They take heat extremely well. These should last for the lifetime of the car. However, given that Pete chose yellow, I don't think they're going to look new for very long, because you can see they're already looking kind of dirty on here. I'm sure people
I knew it was a controversial choice. Post in the comments.
Yellow car, it's gonna look cool,
yeah,
bro. But
I thought I'd spruce it up. I always go black, so I figured, you know what, yellow would be pretty cool, right?
Well, I admire your courage on that one, Pete. But these are going to be a bit of a job to install, though, because the BMW hoses, as you can see, have these plastic sections that are crimped onto the rubber hoses. And they're crimped on so tightly, and there's no like joiner on there anywhere, that we're gonna have to cut these off somehow. And I have no idea how we're gonna do it. I guess a Dremel is maybe
That's what I'm thinking, yeah.
we've defaulted to on that. But if you guys know of a secret way to do this, by all means, let us know in the comment section. It'll be too late to save us from this job, but at least in the future, we can learn some pro
Or it'll
tips.
save somebody else
Yeah.
the effort.
Yeah, exactly. So I should also mention we have opted for Samko's hose clamps as well, which, as we discovered when we did the ITBs, they're really nice quality clamps. They work really well. And I should also mention that these are all handmade in the UK. They actually build a mandrel, like a metal tube that these are then wrapped around. There's like 3 or 4 layers of ply that are wrapped around it. They can do custom stuff for you. It takes time, obviously, for them to do custom stuff, but they have a huge catalog of stuff that you can get in any color, from black, like a rational human would have chosen, to yellow, or even camo. You can get your hoses in a camo.
Thought of the camo DP, but
So, yeah, I think that's enough hose talk for now. Why don't we move on to trying to cut these old guys off here and get these fitted onto the new hoses. So while Pete's over there doing the job, I found this amazing YouTube video. I figured let me search, and sure enough, here's BMW E46 silicone radiator hoses. Thinking, oh, this will show us how to do it. Watch this, everyone.
So this is how it looks like.
And done. 8 seconds video of him showing his hoses. Thanks, bro.
While DP was looking up ways to remove these clamps, I decided to do a thing, and that is just to actually try something. You don't have to always Google everything. I know you spent like, what, 5-10 minutes doing that, and I thought, you know what? Dremel should work pretty well cutting through this, and it certainly did. So it cut through a little metal clamp there really well, and once it did, would you look at that?
Boom.
This comes off like a champ. Now we can, I don't even want to touch this now, Dave.
with your dirty gloves, that's right.
Okay.
Yellow hose life, bro.
Yeah, so we'll put that on there. We'll get our little clamp from Samko, but look at that. So very simple technique, nothing really to it. I'm gonna do the rest of these and we will transfer them over. I don't know about you guys, but I think the Samko hoses look pretty dang good. As you just saw in the time lapse, it was pretty easy swapping them over. So if you're a little worried about doing that job, don't be. Super easy. And I think this completes our whole Samko hose setup here with the yellow ITBs, the Rad hoses, and our wonderful intake. I'm really digging this thing. It's starting to look proper again. However, it is now time for us to move on to a power steering cooler.
Part of the fun of installing a cooler, be it a oil cooler or in this case a power steering cooler, is playing Tetris. Fitting this rectangular shape into the hole here in some way that starts to make sense. And we looked at putting it over here in like the brake ducts area. This is obviously the biggest sort of opening. There's also opening up here at the top, but at the end of the day, we settled on what we thought was like the lowest friction area, meaning the least difficult for us to install into, and that is kind of tucked up in here.
And I would say I'm not sure where else you'd be able to mount this thing. Like there's
It's
just so
tricky.
much plastic and
Yeah.
ducting on this car. It's kind of crazy.
I mean, it's an impressive piece of design.
It really
the way
is.
It's all ducked in, and I really like the way the factory oil cooler is mounted on the bottom of the radiator with all this ducting to it as well. So it's a very efficient, could we even say German efficient system they've got here? And putting this in the front, I guess will reduce a little bit of airflow in here, but there's still lots of open area around it, and there's these 2 big kidneys up here as well. So I think that's a good spot for it. So this is, of course, a Coil Rod piece. This is part of their fluid cooler system. They have 5 sizes. This is their 10 row, smallest of the bunch. It goes up to like 15, 19, 25, and now they even have a big boy, a 35 row cooler. I'm not sure what you'd use that on. That's like a
FD.
rotary
Yeah, there
20B
you go, yep.
size cooler maybe. So this is their most compact offering. It uses drawn and cup design, which is kind of like tube and fin design, although the tubes are actually 2 plates that kind of sandwich together and are integrated into the end tanks, which make it very strong, but also very light. It's a lot lighter than a barn plate style cooler. So pretty nice piece. And as far as the fittings, these coolers don't come with fittings, but if you go to Coil Rad Racing, if you go to coilradracing.com, they have a detailed list of all the fittings that will fit on here. They use a -10 ORB style fitting, so there's an O-ring on them. We're using these vibrant fittings. I have the part number here for the O-ring ones. That's your part number for the O-ring fitting, for those of you guys who want to use the vibrant stuff. And we're also using the 90-degree, it's like a tight 90, isn't it?
It is a tight 90, yep.
See, it's a very sharp 90, but it's still got good flow in it. So those are the two fittings we're using to mount it up in here. And I think we're just going to route the lines through the side of this duct panel around to the factory power steering lines using some vibrant flexible braided hose. And the key word here, I think, is the flexible part, because we've got some tight routing to use. So these braided hoses are really flexible. It gives you a lot of options as far as routing goes. So we will connect these to the factory lines using some adapters that Pete will show you shortly. I think that's pretty much a good summary of where we're at, Pete. What's left to do on this job?
That's it, man. Let's just get to it.
All right.
Good day at the shop when you get to use the vibrant hose shears. They were a necessity in terms of putting this whole system together here. So were our vibrant AN wrenches. These ones come in handy more often than you'd think, actually. But I'm gonna give you a quick rundown of what we did here. So the Koyo power steering cooler was mounted to our front rebar. I made sure to use some rubber isolators there, so there's a little bit of flex. It's not directly mounted there. Then we went and used -10 to 6AN adapter fittings that went to all of our 6AN hose fittings and braided line. These are the tight 90s actually, and they came in quite handy here. Kind of keeps everything up, which was nice. And then over on this side here, I had to get a little clever and do a bunch of adapter work. I actually got to put it into the rubber lines that were running off of, one's coming off of the bottom of the power steering reservoir and the other one goes to the power steering rack. So luckily there we used these nice little pinch clamps. Again, the vibrant tool that I used for that was this guy here. Pinch these together onto the hose nicely, so then that gave me an 6AN fitting on the end of it. Then had the old adapter, the male to male, so we could put the two females together, and there you have it. It's kind of away from anything, so it's not, the lines aren't touching, and I think we've got ourselves a really clean setup overall. I'm really happy with it, and I think it's gonna work exceptionally well. Some of you may be wondering, why didn't we put an oil cooler on this car like we did on the 350Z? And that is because this one already has quite a decent integrated oil cooler. So what you see along there, albeit this one's a little dented and bent, but that is the oil cooler that comes factory on this car. And we really didn't see a need to go there and do that, add complexity to the system when it's already in place. So it was just the power steering. I think that is officially a wrap on this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, definitely give us a thumbs up and make sure to click the notification bell to stay on top of all these videos and subscribe. I'll leave you with the last thing that I actually did to this car before we put all this together, and that is replaced the motor mounts. A lot of you in the previous video mentioned that these Anchor motor mounts that I bought were kind of crummy and they weren't gonna last, so I went ahead and actually bought some E46 M3 specific ones, and they worked out much better. So without further ado, here is the video of that tedious job.